welcome to another edition of ESPN FC Live. No, I'm not Mark Donaldson. I'm the much handsomer Luis Miguel Echegaray. Mark Donaldson is having a grand old time in Copenhagen before his Hearts lose to them tomorrow. Janusz Michallik, he's just having a great time right now. What's going on? How are you, my friend?
It's good. I can tell that you're pretty happy with your Villa doing well. It's going to end soon enough, so don't worry about it. But no, it's all good. Great games, I suppose. And let's just talk about the only team that really matters in all of this.
I knew that's where you were
Liverpool,
going.
because we have a guest for the first time, and she knows everything about it. So,
before we get to her, I just want to note for the record, everybody, that I did not talk about Aston Villa. Janusz Michallik introduced Aston Villa to the show, just so you know. But yes, thank you for that. But yes, Luis Miguel Echegaray, Janusz Michallik, and welcoming the first time, the debut, Beth, Lindop, our Liverpool Football Club correspondent for ESPN and ESPN FC. Beth, welcome to the show. Now, you are our very, very good and also a lifelong Liverpool fan, I believe.
I am, yeah. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for having me. Very excited to be on board. And I seem to have picked a fairly good season to have started in this role. So long may it continue.
Absolutely, an absolute start, and that's what we'll talk about today, everybody. Liverpool's surging run so far in the Premier League and the Champions League under Arne Slot. We'll discuss that and, of course, the futures of some of their key players, including, of course, Mohamed Salah. And then Beth will say goodbye to us, and Janusz and I will stick around to discuss Real Madrid. As are they back? Are they not? Well, we'll have to discuss and see how that goes. But let's begin with LFC after their 1-0 victory over Girona, the Catalan club. Liverpool now 6 out of 6 wins in the Champions League. Our producer Sam, if you want to throw those stats there regarding this game, it wasn't like Arne Slot was very happy with the fixture, discussing after the fact that they weren't at their best. But regardless, Mohamed Salah's penalty, by the way, making him the 11th player to score 50 goals in the Champions League. 62% possession for Liverpool, all those shots, regardless if it was a gritty affair. But Liverpool, perfect. 6 from 6. Janusz Michallik, can anything stop Liverpool right now? 6 from 6, looking very happy indeed, specifically in the Champions League and the Premier League.
Where do we start this? If we want to stay away from the minutiae of what may or may not happen in the world of football and in the Premier League as well. So of course there are many things that could, but really this is a perfect situation at the moment. A team with I would argue one of the best balance in the Premier League and maybe even in the Champions League. I mean, really short of Mo Salah getting injured long term, knock on wood, right here. It's hard to tell. And of course, again, just for the listeners, we all know, what can happen in this league, in the Champions League. There's a lot of unknowns because this is really the first time that we're dealing with this format, right? So in the past, we would have known a lot more than we do right now. And if you look at the table and you look at some of the massive teams that Liverpool may have to face right away, because you just assume from the beginning that the big guns are going to be in the top 8. We're looking at some big names. They're just fighting for their lives right now. And ultimately, out of the group stage, you may play against a top team, and on 2 nights anything's possible. But let's be honest here, because we're in this situation right now at this moment. Liverpool are in a perfect spot.
A perfect spot, perfectly described there. Absolutely, 6 from 6. Also, by the way, 4 points ahead of Chelsea in the Premier League with a game in hand due to the fact that they didn't play in the weekend as the Merseyside derby was postponed. But Beth, I mean, listen, this is actually also Arne Slot, the first manager to guide an English team to 6 straight wins in the Champions League. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Let me ask you this straight away. Can anything slow them down? Can anything stop them, barring, of course, injuries? How do you see this club so far, the sentiment around Liverpool, and how well they're doing under their Dutch manager?
Yeah, well, I think they've certainly surpassed expectations, even Arne Slot's expectations, I think, as well, over the summer, obviously. Losing Jurgen Klopp, who became a real icon of Liverpool Football Club, became more than a manager, really. He embodied the whole city and everything that Liverpool as a city and a community stands for. So replacing him was no mean feat, and I think people anticipated there would maybe be some teething problems. Bar that sort of shock defeat to Nottingham Forest back in September, that hasn't been the case. It's been pretty plain sailing so far. So they've had an incredible start. In terms of what can stop them, I think injuries is obviously the key thing. Liverpool had a little bit of an injury crisis at the start of this year. At that point, they were going great guns in the Premier League, and they fell away as the season went on and crashed out of the Europa League as well. So Liverpool won't be sort of counting the chickens before they've hatched. Mohamed Salah obviously has been irrepressible this season, 16 goals now, his 16th goal last night against Girona. So I think if you can keep Mohamed Salah quiet, then you've maybe got more of a chance of stopping Liverpool. But they've got so many other good players as well. Luis Diaz has an excellent start to the season, Cody Gakpo as well. So there's plenty of goals in the team. And defensively, they've got one of the best defences in world football at the moment. Ibrahima Konaté's injury is maybe a little bit of a worry. But beyond that, they're looking really, really strong.
Really, really strong. And obviously, you mentioned Mohamed Salah. I believe some of the best goal contributions across all of Europe, alongside Marmoush from Frankfurt as well. They've got to play in January in the Champions League. I mean, it's already set, Janusz, but, they still got 2 more matches, Lille and then PSV. Let me ask you this. Is this a situation for Arne Slot where he can now rotate a few players perhaps, and does it become a little bit easier for him, or do you think he doesn't care about that? He wants to continue with the victories and the momentum.
Well, of course you care, and I mean, I've been thinking what can stop them. I mean, if you look at the number of fixtures, it's crazy, right? I mean, they have the Saints now in the League Cup, right? They win that in January. I think I counted possibly 7-8 games maybe in January, right? So that gives you an ability. But, you have to look at it from a different standpoint too. These injuries, for as long as you don't have 5, 6, or 7 key players out, I mean, it's a form of a rotation and a rest. Because the one thing that we probably need to say, about the last performance, it looked leggy. I mean, they looked leggy a little bit against Newcastle, and they got the job done. Of course, they thought, hey, you're at St. James's Park, you're leading 3-2. You probably need it. It makes me laugh because people are going, oh, there's a little bit of a drop off. And I'm looking, okay, within a week, you have Manchester City, Real Madrid, and Newcastle away. You drop 2 points. I mean, you pay for that. No questions asked. Then you go to Girona. And yes, they look leggy in both of these games. But, I look at Konaté. Yes, he's injured, but, this is not going to be long term. So in a way, he is resting. So that's a positive, right? You look at McAllister not play against Girona because of the cards. Well, he can use that because that midfield is putting in miles. And you saw that from Gravenberch just a little bit, right? So who knows? Maybe the game against Fulham or Southampton for sure, you give them a chance. So these rotate, look at Alisson, right? I mean, he was gone for 2 months, so you couldn't tell. And then he comes and man on the match, you could say. I mean, incredible performance to get thrown right back into it and kind of, knowing that you can, of course you can count on your number one. So I think all of that rotation is important. It's been happening, and that's out of necessity. But certainly this beautiful start takes away some worries that are always going to be there, because that's what happens to clubs like Liverpool, Real Madrid, the best in the world. They are going to be playing a lot of games because they're going to be in many competitions. I didn't even mention FA Cup yet.
Yeah, 9 matches in December. You mentioned even just 1 less in January. There's a lot going on, of course, in the Premier League, Champions League, Leagues Cup, the FA Cup, as you mentioned. But Arne Slot is the kind of manager that doesn't care about the conversation. He's just going to focus on the next match in hand, the details. Let's go back, Beth, to Mohamed Salah, Liverpool's golden son. You mentioned the contributions, by the way, tied for the most in Europe. I mentioned 50 goals in the Champions League, including qualifiers for him now. 32 years old, he is just ridiculous. But on the outside surface of this, Beth, there's also the conversation about a contract negotiation with the hopeful. Well, we'll see. Obviously, if nothing is done from New Year's Day, he can talk to other clubs. He becomes a free agent in the summer. What is the latest there with Mohamed Salah? Because, I'm just talking about Mohamed Salah, but there's also Trent Alexander-Arnold and Virgil van Dijk. But let's focus on Mohamed Salah. What is the latest on him? I mean, there's been so much conversations about whether he's staying, he's going. What's going on?
Yeah, it's a very difficult situation that Liverpool find themselves in with arguably the three most important players, probably alongside Alisson, but three of certainly the most important players out of contract at the end of the season. And there's myriad reasons for that. You know, the manager leaving, a little bit of a vacuum of power at the top as well, with changes behind the scenes. So Liverpool have obviously found themselves in a pretty difficult situation. I think from Salah's perspective, and to be fair for all three, the club are certainly remaining tight-lipped about things. You know, Mo Salah, a lot of these players have massive entourages. Mo Salah doesn't really. It's his agent, Rami Abbas, who will be leading the negotiations from his side, and was the one who brokered the deal for him last time in 2022 when he became the club's highest paid player in their history. So negotiations are ongoing with all three of those players. In terms of concrete updates, they're very few and far between at the moment. As I say, the club are being pretty cagey and tight-lipped about it, as you would imagine. You know, they don't want to be in this position with so much speculation over the future of three of the most important players. I think one thing to say for Salah is he's come out a few times over the last few weeks. He came out after Liverpool beat Southampton a couple of weeks ago and vocalised his frustration, I guess, at not being at that point. He hadn't been offered a contract. And as much as that obviously was perceived in some quarters as criticism of the club, and I'm sure he'd like things to be wrapped up sooner rather than later, I think that the big takeaway for me is that he is very keen to stay at Liverpool. I think he actually said the words, "There is no club like this one." And I think the reason that he has exerted so much public pressure on the club is born from a desire to stay. You know, he's very happy here. His family is settled in Cheshire, and for me, I would be very surprised if a deal doesn't get done at some point. But obviously, as with all of these contracts, you know, there's a number of intricacies to consider, and contract lengths to be hammered out, and payment as well. So still, I imagine there'll be a number of hurdles to cross. But I think certainly from Salah, from the players' side, there's a desire to stay at Liverpool.
Janusz, I mean, I'm going to play devil's advocate. I said I was sandwiched between some Liverpool fanhood here. I mean, clearly, as Beth mentioned, it's customary of any good, strong, solid professional club to not let their laundry be publicly announced. So we don't know exactly the intricacies of how far the contract talks have gone. But as Beth is saying, there's conversations are being tight-lipped. But I will play devil's advocate here, because from New Year's Day, he can talk to anybody. Why is it taking so long? Do you expect something to happen before Christmas? Do you think it should have taken so long? Maybe should have this been a decision earlier? What do you think?
No, I mean, Liverpool has brought this on themselves because of the three players. And it's a chain reaction right now, because I have no doubt. I mean, there's nothing good that's going to come out of not signing Mo Salah. I mean, it's just, you're not going to live that down. It's impossible. I mean, you can make the case for others as well, but in particular with Mo Salah, we all know how difficult it is to get that type of player. He's not even a number 9, and look at the goals he puts up, not just this season, but over the course of the last decade, right? I mean, it's incredible. Everybody's looking for that sort of player. Not for today's show, but we all know which teams they are. It's hard. So, but, you know, with that goes massive salary, and that, of course, Van Dijk will feel that he deserves that as well, which he does. And Trent Alexander-Arnold, it's different altogether, because he is a local boy, and, you know, I mean, it'll look better if they let him go. It'll probably look even worse if he walks up by himself with no compensation. You know, that's going to be the end of him there in more ways than that. But I think that's their fault, that they've put themselves in a situation like this. I can sort of understand it, because I do think that Klopp was probably letting people know that he's not going to be there much longer. That's just the feeling I get. Mo Salah probably like that, if I had to guess, because it wasn't perfect between the two. But this is a situation where I think if we're just concentrate on Mo Salah, they absolutely have to get it done. And then, you know, we'll see what that reaction from those camps that Beth was talking about. I'm talking about Van Dijk and Trent, assuming that both want to stay. What that reaction is going to be. Look, Liverpool will have money. Look where they are. I mean, I remember before this last Champions League game, I thought I saw, I mean, crazy number already, 22, 25 million made after 6 matches, right? If you winning games and being at the top and not, and all of that. A new contract with Adidas coming in, that's going to be massive as well. The Liverpool Football Club, there's money there. It's just a question of how much of that money Liverpool wants to part with. But I think that they're smart with what happened with Slot, right? But I mean, who could have possibly thought that you're going to have this kind of start after losing someone like Klopp? I mean, look at Arsene Wenger, look at Sir Alex Ferguson. It can go backwards in a hurry. So Salah stays. I'm convinced of that. Of course, it's just a guess on my part.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. And also the complexity of the situation is added when you think about and consider about the ages, because we're not talking about somebody in their mid-20s or late 20s like Mohamed Salah's 32, Virgil van Dijk is 33. Trent Alexander-Arnold is a tricky one for me because he's 26. He's clearly has big ambitions. He wants a Ballon d'Or. Real Madrid have shown no surprises in having their interest. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. But I think I agree. Mohamed Salah, Virgil van Dijk even should be able to do something. So Liverpool fans should be happy. But the clock is ticking, so we'll have to see what happens.
I have a question for Beth, because Go
ahead, Janusz.
She's there on the terraces. I haven't been there for a while. I need to visit. There you go. Like Donaldson in Denmark. I need to go maybe. But what's the feeling about Trent? We often talk about the importance of the three, and it's an impossible task. I mean, it just isn't. I mean, Van Dijk back to his absolute best, leader of the defense. The funny thing for me when I look at these players is, and I'm looking at it as I'm just going to look at it as a fan. Like when I was a little kid, we always had that one player that we felt, my goodness, he can, right? And obviously, Mo Salah, we all think, right? When the result's not there, I mean, look at the game against Newcastle. Mo Salah single-handedly, brought Liverpool to almost 3 points, right? I mean, and you could sense it. Just give it to Mo because nobody else is going to get it done. But yet, I always have that feeling when I watch Liverpool, when it's tight in the end or you need a win, even though a defender, I always feel there's no other player that can make that final pass, that great cross, that great through ball, right? Because before you can score, you can still get up there. What's the feeling from Liverpool fans about the importance of Trent? If you had to ask and you pose that question, out of the three, what's the feeling out there?
I think it's a really divisive subject at the moment. I think it is notable how Salah has come out and voiced his desire to stay at the club, really, and he's spoken very fondly about the club in interviews over the last few weeks. Virgil van Dijk has sort of done similar, whereas Trent has been pretty quiet on it. He spoke to the media after Liverpool's win over Bournemouth earlier in the season, and he sort of said, this is a club I've been at since the age of 6. None of my other contracts situations have been played out in the media, and that's not going to happen this time, and that is completely fair enough, and he's obviously wanting to respect the club, but it's a very difficult one. I think he is the one in a lot of ways who it would sting to lose the most for a number of reasons, really. I think first of all, as you say, he's a little bit younger, so he's got his sort of best years ahead of him, I guess. And also the fact that he's a real asset to Liverpool. If he had a couple of years left on his contract and someone came in to buy him, that he'd be commanding a fee of probably 70-80 million as a minimum. So Liverpool, in a way, are losing out on that money, or they will do if he leaves on a free transfer, certainly. So I think that leaves a bitter taste in the mouth for a number of fans. I think as well, it's quite hard when you're a fan to separate sort of your emotion from the business side of football. And I think as a fan, you look at that and you think Liverpool's record against Real Madrid over the last couple of years hasn't been particularly great. There's no love lost between the two clubs. And I think it would hurt a lot to see him go and play for Real Madrid, if indeed that is what he ends up going to do. I think you also have to look at it from his perspective that, he's an elite athlete approaching the peak of his powers, going to Real Madrid, irrefutably the biggest club in the world, and would, elevate his platform as an athlete as much as it would, perhaps enable him to win more trophies on the pitch as well. So it's a really difficult situation for him to be in. The club, obviously aren't immune to criticism for letting the situation get to the point that it is at now. But yeah, I think it would certainly hurt for a lot of the fan base if Trent were to leave on a free transfer next summer. Yeah,
it's a good question there, Janusz, and a good answer because as we began here, TAA is a complex situation given his age, his complete influence as a player, because he's so unique too. This is not a prototypical right back, and obviously the interest from other clubs. So stay tuned on this one. Mohamed Salah, Virgil van Dijk, Trent Alexander-Arnold. But as far as Liverpool is concerned, 6 wins out of 6 in the Champions League, top of the Premier League table, 4 points above Chelsea with a game in hand. Oh, as of right now, it's looking very, very nice. Beth, Lindop, thank you so much for being part of our first show. Thank you so much, Beth.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Beth, make sure to
Beth.
check out all her work on ESPN FC. All right, Janusz, just me and you. Let's go from Merseyside to Madrid. Let's talk about Real Madrid, as we were talking about within the reported interest of Trent Alexander-Arnold. But most recently, let's discuss the comeback win against a very good Atalanta from Gasperini. Mbappe was brilliant until he came off. It was also the first match where all three, Jude Bellingham, Vinicius Jr., and Mbappe impacted the game, of course, with goals and goals contributions. They end up winning. What you make out of the game, specifically Mbappe's performance before he came off, and Jude Bellingham as well, who's turned a corner because he started pretty quietly, but now he scored, 6 in the last 7?
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for that injury, and it seems that it's nothing big, right?
Yeah,
and,
nothing major. Yeah,
nothing major. I mean, I was thinking, I actually wrote it down. Perfect game for Real Madrid. They absolutely needed that, because we know that this is a different team. They've had some issues, although if you look at, in particular La Liga and Champions League as well, but I mean, the situation in La Liga is not all that best because Barcelona has dropped off as well, right? I mean, the situation is a little bit more difficult in the Champions League, but I don't have any worries about that when it comes to Real Madrid. The key for them is that I think in that game, that front three, and Real Madrid in general just reminded everybody why Real is Real. So sorry for the simplicity, but I hope everybody gets it, right? Because when there's doubt, we go, Carlo Ancelotti, is he still good enough? Do they need a younger player? Do they need, and we can argue that. And certainly I think we can have conversations about Carlo Ancelotti going forward, because there's almost that time where somebody else needs to come in. But I think the doubting of Kylian Mbappe, Vinny Jr. to some degree, Jude Bellingham, because, I mean, obviously the start of the season wasn't great. Not only all three scored, but they are starting to play very, very important role. Bellingham's already, 6 goals and 3 assists in the last few games. So obviously showing the form of last season, LME. If you look at Vinny, I mean, just coming back from injury, right? Comes in, beginning of the game's not so great, but he scores. A little bit lucky, but he scores. And then he's got that wonderful assist, right, from deep within his half for Jude Bellingham. And Mbappe from the beginning looked dangerous. And of course, scored that goal, which I think was important. And who knows, if he stayed on, he might have played even a bigger part in that game later on, because I'm sure that confidence, you could feel it in his, or you could see it in his body language, how important that goal was for him. Great first touch, and then he puts that away. So I'm not saying that, the job is done. But when things go against you a little bit, and everybody's being questioned, starting from the manager, the star players as well, the senior leadership of the team, I think a game like this, in a crunch situation, let's be honest here. I mean, they had to win that game. That was as good as it comes, except for that, still injury to Kylian Mbappe.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you said it perfectly when you said, listen, the thing about Real Madrid is that they don't even need to be perfect. They just have to maintain that grit. And it was a really important match for them against an Atalanta side, which, Gasperini continues to do wonders there. Focusing a little bit on Jude Bellingham here, by the way, everybody, comparing his goalless start in his last 8 games. Look at this. I mean, he scored in 4 straight matches in all competitions for Los Blancos. And as I mentioned, scored in 6 of his last 7 matches for the club. I mean, him alongside Vinicius Jr. and Kylian Mbappe, when those are clicking, it's important. But let me ask you this for a second about Real Madrid, because they are 18th, 3 points off the automatics, right? What do you make of their fate then in January? They've got to play Salzburg at home and then away at a very impressive Brest, by the way. Something tells me, Janusz Michallik, that the story will be the same one. They'll crawl back into the storyline and go forward.
They'll win the 2 games, and the rest is not in their control in terms of how far they can get up that table, right? I mean, what are they, 3 points out of the top 8 now?
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible, but you can't tell. It's not as straightforward as it is in the group stages, because by now it's over 6 games. But towards the end exactly what you need, and just as long as you make it, right? I mean, it's home and away. It was much different. So this competition is, everybody's feeling it out, and we won't know. But I'm convinced they're going to win those 2 games, home and away, and they'll be up there. And they may be short of top 8, and that's going to be interesting. That's the difference in this new format. If you like it, love it, or hate it, whatever it may be, right? They may have to, obviously, they'll have a pretty big game. So, but there's surprises in the top 8 as well. So it depends. It's a little bit of luck of the draw. Well, not draw, but the brackets there. So let's wait and see. But I don't worry about, say, Real Madrid not making it to the out of the group stages. That's not going to be the case. So I don't think they. It's one of those where exactly what you need to do. If you look at the opponents. With Brest, something's got to give. In the last game, I mean, against the round of play, they won this game. They still don't know how they won it. Well, they know because Bizot, the goalkeeper, was standing on his head, right? But they won it. Fair play. I mean, it's a minnow. I mean, what they've done is quite incredible when you just look at the Ligue 1 teams. I mean, look at what PSG are. Even Monaco, the Monaco's doing much better. We'll see them a little bit later tonight. But so that's wonderful. But I still think that. If you go to Atalanta and do that against an incredibly good Atalanta team, I think they'll be able to do it in the last game against Brest away from home. So no worries there.
Yeah, they're just like a shark in the water. They just need to be around, and eventually they'll find a way.
But let's make something clear, because it's because we're saying, hey, Real Madrid are back and they're going to win the Champions League. Look, I mean, if they're going to win the Champions League, they're going to need the front 3 in this sort of form. Because it's going to be the front 3 that will get him there. In other words, the rest is out of balance. We all know it. We know about that midfield. There's injuries. Some of them are long term. It's not that easy where you're going to just find players, because you look at Carvajal, Militao, another big injury, and all of that. And they already had issues in the center of the pitch. So there's certainly a lack of balance. Defensively, they're not sound because of the numbers as well. And it didn't look all that great in this particular game as well. Now, I've watched it. I read it. Yes, Ceballos, in that midfield, okay, that's a little bit better. Valverde, is that where he should be playing? No, but we know he can. So it's not all rosy at Real Madrid, but having a front 3 like that, assuming that they can hit their stride and be at their absolute top of the game, it's not impossible. Sometimes you can outscore the opposition and still get the job done.
Yeah, that's why I said they're a shark. They just need to be around and then see what happens. And by the way, they're 2 points off the top of La Liga with a game in hand as well. So, things are still going. But as you mentioned, Vinicius Jr., Jude Bellingham, Kylian Mbappe, absolutely crucial towards their success. And as Janusz said it, and I echo it, our sources confirm on ESPN that it's not too serious, the thigh injury on Mbappe. He just needed to come off for precaution. But regardless, Real Madrid with a very big victory in Italy. Let's see how they continue in December. For now, thank you to Beth, Lindop, our Liverpool Football Club correspondent, and Janusz Michallik. And we wish Mark Donaldson all the very best with his Hearts against Copenhagen. I hope he's enjoying his trip to Copenhagen. Isn't that nice, Janusz? Some people can just fly off and do their thing.
Yeah, man. It's, well, I mean, he'll be great. Great atmosphere there. That's for sure.
No, it should be.
That's one of those special places where, like,
it's a great city,
one of the
too.
First ones, right? When the park. It's not like the first team you think of in terms of atmosphere, but it is incredible. So that's going to be a tall task for Mr. Donaldson and Hearts.
Yeah, he won't care. He's just happy he's in Copenhagen.
Of course.
Yeah. It's a great city. But anyway, thank you, everybody, for sticking with us on ESPN FC Live. Janusz Michallik, Beth, Lindop, Luis Miguel Echegaray will be back, by the way, on Friday. And don't forget this weekend as well, which includes the Manchester derby as United travel to the Etihad and Man City. So much more on ESPN FC, ESPN, and wherever you can find us, YouTube, social, and the website. Janusz, Michallik, Luis Miguel Echegaray, Beth, Lindop. Have a great rest of your day. Till then, bye-bye.